What's up, Mortgage Coach community? Dave Savage sitting down with Kristin Messerli. And this will be my first time interviewing Kristin as the sales leader for experience.com. What's up, Kristin?
Hi, great to be here.
It's good to see you. It's been a long time.
I know, I can't believe it. It's been a really busy first of the year.
Yeah, no doubt. You have been killing it. So guys, I've interviewed Kristin more times than I can count. She was always on this stage as the founder and CEO of Cultural Outreach. And she, is a prolific industry speaker. I don't know that too many people were on more stages than Kristin in the mortgage industry in 2018 and 2019. Of course, no one's on a lot of stages except for virtual stages now, right?
Yep, that was a big shift.
Big shift. And she's always just been a great ambassador about multicultural, helping underserved markets, and how to speak millennial, how to use, that's why she loves Mortgage Coach, because it's a digital platform. But today she is running sales for the mortgage division of Experience. And Kristin, any thoughts on that, as we kick off today's call and the conversation we're going to have?
No, I'm just really excited about where we're headed in terms of digital experience and digital mortgage. I mean, we saw last year a huge jump in digital mortgage applications, and all of everyone was trying to adjust to work from home and making everything digital. So I think that allowed us to leapfrog a little bit in terms of our growth in this area. And just, where I am today, my focus has always been on understanding the customer, but for us to be able to expand with social survey, becoming experience.com, we're able to survey customers really help companies listen to their customers, make changes to their customer experience. And I think now, so I'm just excited about where we are generally in the industry and in our position to be able to help lenders.
Love it. So guys, part of this conversation is I'm preparing for my opening keynote at the Modern Real Estate Summit next Friday. And we had the Modern Mortgage Summit last year. Todd Bookspan put on that. I helped, I was the MC, and now we're doing the Modern Real Estate. And I asked Kristin, hey, Kristin, will you spend some time with me really looking at that keynote, how I'm going to define what a modern real estate professional is? And we thought hey, it'd be cool. She's going to do a little consulting session with me, but let's do it together. And one of the things that we thought would be cool is if we built this conversation around an article that Kristin and I wrote, not last year, but literally February. And we called it and we titled it "The Seismic Shift Happening with Even Greater Transformation Coming Soon." So of course, we didn't see COVID coming. I don't think, but we knew that, the world is changing. Kristin, I know you recently reread this as prep for today's conversation, but what were you, I was pretty proud of it. When I read it, I was like, we're pretty badass. We wrote a really good article.
I know, it's so funny. I didn't as I was reading, I was like, oh my gosh, that's so good. I feel like, but also one of the big things I was thinking was that I wrote an article recently in Housing Wire about the digital shift and where we are today. And a lot of the things are the same, but in a different way. I mean, when we're talking about how quickly things are changing and all of that, it's just exponentially more today. So it was interesting reading that and thinking we could say the exact same thing today, but it would mean something different.
Well, I mean, a lot of it's the same, but there are some nuances. I mean, this COVID made a radical acceleration of a lot of these things. So they were already accelerating. And Kristin and I are going to do our best to kind of rewrite another article on this. For anybody that's watching this in Facebook Live, I just put a link to the article. So if you're one of the few, not few, but one of the folks on Facebook Live, check it out. And then we will put this, this video will be on YouTube. And then stay tuned for another article from Kristin and I coming out of this conversation. So Kristin, let's just go through some highlights on it. And I don't know if there's any one thing you want to pull out, but I mean, I thought our opening statement, the mortgage industry has experienced seismic shifts in 2008. I don't think we knew what seismic was until 2020. I mean, that's
the kind of thing I'm saying. We could say that today and it would mean something so different, but it's, I mean, we've had that there was definitely a seismic shift that we talk about here. But yeah, last year was crazy. So.
But well, what about this? I think while this digital shift that we called out, it really started in 2017. But I think historians, when they look back at this time, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and then 50 years from now, and 100 years from now, it'll be 2020. Like they'll all gravitate that this 2020 was the pivot, was the seismic year. Even though
these were like the grumblings, like the foundation was getting set and everything was becoming ripe, but then this is when the explosion happened in a way.
Yeah, so I think we might even when we write this next article, it is about, like writing it where 2020 was the pivot year. But I think something that's interesting, and I'm going to show you guys. I've put together this, I don't know, battlefield map of the real estate space. But this was the battlefield in the mortgage space. And literally in 2017, at the beginning, it looked like this over here. And literally in a single year, everybody got in the mortgage space. I mean, Zillow got in the mortgage space. Now, of course, Zillow got in the mortgage space a few years ago. This year, they announced that the Zestimate is not a Zestimate. It's a button to buy a home. So guys, I mean, just imagine where it's going to be 3 years from now. Any comments or narrative you have on this?
No, not yet.
Okay, cool. We'll keep rolling through it. I'll always love my conversation with futurist Steve Brown, former futurist of Intel. He's the one that, for the very first time, I heard the acronym, WACD, what Amazon can't do. Check out this interview. And then, guys, we all know this is pretty straightforward. We've all talked about this, but, the digital shift is just the consumer having the key to the castle with a mobile device. Anything you want to add about that, or anything that you think has changed over the past few years with that? Because I do have a couple things to call out if you don't.
Yeah. So first of all, and this actually might have been said before that in the article, but I had a note here about how consumers don't differentiate from digital mortgage or online communication and traditional. And I think that's present now more than ever, where we're not thinking like, oh, I'm going to do a digital mortgage application, or I'm going to, go online to do my mortgage application. It's just, I'm going to complete an application. And it's, of course it's going to be online. Like I recently went through the home buying process, and one of the lender I had to go with, ultimately I had to actually fill in a 1003. And I was like, what in the, like, what is happening? I mean, I just completely forgot that would even be something that you would do. You would print a form and fill it out, So anyway, just to say, like, we're not talking about, I think we started that conversation back then of like, digital is the new normal, that's the new traditional in a way. And that line is very, very blurry or non-existent now.
Yeah, and I think when we wrote this article, I mean, well, less than 50% of mortgages were done digitally. I mean, it was probably maybe 15 or 20%. And I mean, guys, even big banks are over 70% digital mortgage. And when we interview top producers, they're at 95 to 99% digital mortgage. And then I think, tell me if you think that this is the biggest change that happened in COVID, which was cash is dead. Like, I can't remember the last time I pulled cash out of my pocket. I mean, I still have it in my wallet for emergencies, but I mean, Apple Pay, like boom. Yeah. I mean, I'm pissed if I can't Apple Pay. A funny story, I was at a restaurant the other night with my wife, and the girl comes up and she had like the handheld thing, and she's doing it, and I'm like putting my phone on it, and I'm like clicking on it, and she goes, "What are you doing, sir?" And it wasn't Apple Pay, but I mean, I'm literally like kind of being a creeper, like this girl's like just getting ready to like ask me for my credit card, so she put it in, and I'm like touching her device. I mean, it was
that's a perfect example of this shift in expectations, though. I mean, we so quickly as consumers we shift with the times, and like we expect now that we're going to use a digital wallet and Apple Pay is going to be available wherever we go. And sometimes businesses don't catch up as quickly.
Yeah. No, but they had the little mobile thing that you put the card in. So they were like right there, but they were just like 6 months behind. And anyways, but I think as mortgage and real estate professionals, we need to think about that. And we need to think about how are we delivering this amazing experience to families within the transaction. And then the other thing that I think has exploded since we wrote this article is just the value beyond the transaction. Obviously, Mortgage Coach is a player in that beyond the transaction value. But I think HomeBot had been founded by then, but HomeBot wasn't where it was. House Happy wasn't where it was. HomeBinder, we're starting to see all these, okay, how do we deliver this great digital mortgage experience? You guys have evolved radically. Like, I don't think we were integrated into expert.com at that point. So there wasn't as much integration. And the beyond the transaction value. I mean, I think when we write this new article, we might even want to title it, the future of mortgage and real estate being modern is beyond the transaction. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that when we wrote this, there was a comment in there that most LOs lose 70% of their past customers. I would be really curious to know what that is today, because I think the value beyond the transaction is where you retain your customers and you retain that community and build on those referrals. And I think, leveraging things like that. Also, also touching on automation and the value of having tools that build on each other and integrate with each other and build automation so that it frees you up to deliver the most value to your customers. And I think that is also exploding a little bit in terms of recognizing the value of integrating your tools with each other and how that provides value to your team and your customers.
And that brings up another point of just like, not only are integrations making the workflow for loan officers better and easier, but they're helping families. So I thought this was a really good quote. It's time for the mortgages to stop using taxi driver strategies in an age of Uber. And so I think that's obvious. I mean, we were ahead of our time when we said that, but I think that's pretty obvious. I really loved the part where we pulled from some interviews I had with Francis LeBeau, who at the time was the chief product officer for Mr. Cooper. And he did a whole quote. I'm going to actually read this one out loud because I think it sets up a lot of the rest of the conversation. But he said, once you buy a home, it's the place you live, but it's also the largest source of wealth creation in the country. So not for a family, in the country. So if you can support consumers and information and tools to help them manage their home in a smarter manner, whether it's as simple as a payment tool, as foundational as debt consolidation. Mortgage Coach, we created a debt consult tool just a few months ago, or an upgrade. Opportunities around the home's value, think House Happy, or excuse me, HomeBot. What's happening in the neighbor, maintenance, that is House Happy, value of maintenance. What is happening in your neighborhood? You can make a really large and positive impact. So, I mean, this is, I almost think when we write this new article, like that was like an idea, but now it's an idea whose time has come. Yeah. And now, like, what do modern mortgage and what do modern real estate professionals do to exploit that so that this decade is better than the last? Thoughts?
I can't remember if we were talking about this at the time of the article, or if we started referring to this before, but I know at that time I started really leaning into the idea that everything is consumer centric. Like we're shifting from offline processes to that were driven by the industry towards buyer driven, consumer centric, online digital processes and experiences. And I think that just understanding what that shift means for the consumer to be at the center of the transaction, and that's more than the application experience. That's so far beyond just it's a holistic experience that the customer is looking for and expecting. So I think, looking beyond that, everything is a step beyond what we were talking about there.
Yeah. So guys, the next stage of this conversation, Kristin and I want to kick this off. Let's review what we wrote a few years ago. Let's connect it to where we're at today. And then really, I'm going to get some free consulting from Kristin right now on the keynote I'm going to give next week. some of you that are going to attend the Modern Real Estate Summit next week, which, by the way, we will have sold over 10,000 tickets to that. We're already over 9,000 tickets. Hundreds of loan officers have purchased multiple tickets to give to agents. So it's going to be a pretty prolific event. And I'm going to open it up with this, Kristin, and let's just talk through it. So, obviously this is going to be the slide, or at least there'll be some cover slide of the event. I did think for less than a minute, I was going to define what the digital shift is in the digital shift era. I'm going to be really quick on this because, this was almost old news when you and I wrote the article, but I do think like this is common knowledge now.
I will say it seems like old news because we've talked about it so much, but every time I've had conversations with people, I think it's just such an important reminder, and maybe expanding on what this shift means, because a lot of people take for granted that things have been done a certain way for a long time and that's how they get done. I will tell you from my personal experience of buying a home, it was not consumer centric much of the time. And I think with a couple of lenders that I pursued. So I think that people need to hear that. And definitely, realtors who haven't been in your community for a long time need to hear this kind of thing. So,
well, I'm going to actually transcribe this, and I think you and I are going to write another article around this, and we may want to make a slide. So like this all started in, 2017, the shift in 2020, and here you are buying a house in 2021. And we might want to almost do like loan officer A, loan officer B in 2021, and almost.
Oh my gosh, I would love to do that.
Yeah, make a slide about that. And I do think, well, when we did the last version, I really said, hey, it all started in 2007, which, by the way, it did. That's when the iPhone was launched. But I think that was chapter one, and I do think the end of chapter one was 2020. And as I'm even talking to you right now, it's like, we got to call out, this is the year that cash got crunched, and maybe this is the year where when I check into an airplane, which isn't very often right now, but it happens, like everybody is using their mobile phone. Back then it was like you were kind of early if you were using your mobile phone to check in. And now like paper is like, who's using paper to check in? And so guys, this is the definition. Now this is a slide that I created coming out of that article with Kristin. So like, Kristin, thank you for writing that with me, because it helped me visualize and document where we're at. And what about this, Kristin? I still think 2027 is a good guess to when there will be like radical, not that it's all going to happen in 1 year, but like when we sit back in 2027, it'll be interesting if we're still creating content like this together. I think you and I will be, but what will we say? Will there have just been such a radical shift by this year that the mortgage and real estate experience is unrecognizable? What are your thoughts?
Gosh, it's so crazy to even think that far ahead. Like that's not that far ahead, but to me, everything's changing so quickly that I definitely think that's the latest we would want to project into.
It could be. So in other words, it could be earlier. It could be 2005.
100%, yeah.
I don't disagree. Well, I'm going to, from stage, say 2027. And my logic is that's 2 more cycles. Moore's law is every 10 years, 50 years worth of change happens. So it all started in 2007. Let's do 2 Moore's law cycles and the world's different.
Can you talk through what you mean by it goes straight to the home? Is that you mean like the one button push type of thing, or there's home shopping in there,
Well, I left a lot of ambiguity. So I do think loan officers will have less logins. So, the loan officer that right now you're having to log into Mortgage Coach, HomeBot, LOS, pricing engine. I think, all the technology that runs the mortgage and real estate industry, at least the legit best of breed, you'll have one login. So that's the good news, loan officers. You'll have less logins. But the bad news is consumers will have less logins too. It'll be a more unified experience. I don't know how far Zillow can take push button, get keys, but it's going to be push button and you started a transaction. So I just think there'll be a much more push button. And maybe it should be, instead of one little thing, it should be 3. But like right now, that little chaos in the middle where there's hundreds of disparate platforms, logins for consumers and for loan officers, it's just going to be less chaotic and more unified. That's what I mean.
Yeah, I think you can speak to that. This is great.
Okay, cool. So guys, let's break down real estate. So in this article that the last one Kristin and I wrote, we just tackled mortgage. In this new article, we're gonna tackle both housing. Like the battlefield's changed in mortgage, the battlefield's changed in real estate. And once upon a time, it looked this simple, big box franchise and a couple different kinds of independent real estate companies. Along came a disruptor, Zillow, and soon, like one thing happened and boom, this is the competitive battlefield for the real estate industry. And you've got all kinds of models. You've gone from, 4 to 5 models competing for the family in the real estate business to 10 solid categories. And I put a little thing over the bottom left-hand corner. Who's next? I think Amazon, in theory, between the data that they have on almost every household in America, unique purchasing behavior, and what they could buy, they could reinvent the MLS. They could become the ultimate disruptor. Not saying, I'm not here to predict that could happen. I'm just saying they are well positioned to do that. So what are your thoughts when you see this slide? First of all, do you think, knowing the story I'm going to tell from stage, and I got about 7 minutes, any feedback for me so far?
I think everything's great. One thing I want to add to the conversation here is that, simultaneously, right now, banking as a service is a thing that's an emerging space. And that's where a technology company can, use a BBVA bank account or something like that and white label that, or there's banking services that they can overlay on top of their technology and offer now fintech services to their customers. And I think that is going to continue to explode. And it's the same type of thing here. I mean, you can purchase white label listings or MLS, stuff available for companies. I think tech companies who are able to move fast and, grow quickly may leverage banking as a service and listings and or create their own. But that is something I'm looking towards in terms of a real disruption in the future.
Interesting. Well, I like that. I'm going to think about how to talk about that, because I do think it's worth mentioning. And I'm going to go to some point in my presentation, my keynote, to get every realtor to know what this term is. WACD. I've talked about it from the mortgage case a long time, but it stands for what Amazon can't do. And if you're in the mortgage and real estate space, you probably need to add a Z to it. You need to do what Amazon and Zillow can't do. And this is going to get kind of to my punchline before we open up this Modern Real Estate Summit. It's really taking the advice from Mr. Disruptor himself. Rich Barton from the stage. I was in the stage at New York when this was said. I wrote it down word for word. I did, just because I'm Mr. Mortgage Coach doesn't mean I added coach. He said coach. He said the agent of the future is a coach and advisor to home buyers and home sellers. And he said this in 2017. And I think, I don't know that everybody in the audience got it. And I still don't know if everybody in the audience is going to get it. But if you want to be a local referral-based agent in the future, you need to tangibly be a coach and advisor. You can't just do transactions. You can't just list homes. You can't just do open houses. You can't just work with buyers. You need to be like such a legit coach and advisor that someone would write you a check like they'd write an attorney just for your service and value. What are your thoughts on that?
Gosh, yeah, I'm so passionate about this because I think a lot of real estate agents and loan officers are trying to compete in the same way as a technology company. So I felt really bad about my experience with my real estate agent, but looking back, there's some lessons that I would like to pass on to other real estate agents. Because I had a real estate agent who was, she was nice and she was showing me homes, but it was a means to the end kind of thing. And when I went to the Redfin app, I could book appointment times in the app, and it was easier than texting her, working around her schedule. And in the Redfin app, I could just do it quickly and I didn't have to think about it. So when you're competing as a transaction, then you're not going to beat out technology. But if you're competing as a coach, that's a different story. Like if I knew she was going to help me in terms of being my best coach and advisor through that process, I don't care if it's inconvenient in some way, so
Yeah,
I
so
think
she
that's
was doing traditional things that you could do easier
yeah.
through Redfin, one of the disruptors here.
Yeah.
They've got a killer app. They've got a unified experience. Guys, they have a mortgage company, but you've got to deliver value outside the transaction.
Yeah.
And
And because everything had shifted towards these home tours, like you had to book tours, you couldn't go to open houses, that it just made it so much easier to use the app. And I think that if my real estate agent had communicated from the beginning, here's what it's like to work with me, and really like leaned into the coaching side of things, provided expertise, and which I know that she probably has, but it just, if you're competing on a transaction, I've talked about this so many times. We've talked about this in terms of loan officers. If you're competing as a transaction, you're always going to be beat out by someone else that's more convenient or has a lower rate or something like that. If you're competing on a service experience or as an advisor, that's where you'll win every time.
yeah, so let's get into, because in your experience, I know you had called me a couple of times and just kind of like, Dave, you
Mhm.
won't believe this. I had to fill out an app, and then I know you and I I saw you getting interviewed, and I heard you. Who was it that interviewed you?
Yeah. So, Andrew Berman.
Andrew Berman, which he interviewed me too.
Mhm.
And by the way, that was so cool. Like someone texted me, Kristin Messerli is giving Mortgage Coach a big shout out right now, and I'm like,
Yeah.
right
I'm
on.
a more raving fan than ever.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that, because I want to. I'm doing this modern real estate summit so that realtors actually get to hear about what Mortgage Coach is, so that they are like
Yeah.
winning. To me, is thousands of realtors are texting loan officers next Wednesday saying, "Why aren't you a mortgage coach?" And so know that that's why I'm
Yeah.
putting my energy and effort into helping Todd Bookspan with this event. And so tell me your experience, because it will help me with my keynote.
Yeah. I mean, that I have always wanted Mortgage Coach to be available to every consumer, but for us to be able to find loan officers. And it was an interesting process when I was first going into it, because I didn't want to reach out to friends or colleagues. I wanted to just go about it the normal way a consumer would go about it. And I thought, what am I supposed to do? I go to my real estate agent and she gives me a referral to someone. I ended up going ahead and applying at different places and had a lot of different experiences, but I wanted to be able to experience Mortgage Coach, and I couldn't search for a Mortgage Coach, loan officer or lender. And, but I will say, so my experience was interesting because I ended up falling in love with a home that is a tenant in common, which is a TIC, which is brand new to the LA area. So there were only two lenders that I could choose from. So I had a great experience with another lender, but I couldn't go with them. So I had to choose this other one. And both of them were just absolutely archaic. I mean, you fill out a 1003 on one of them and submit that in. And both of them were impossible to get a hold of. It was just like a crazy experience. But it was good for me to have that experience. So simultaneously, I mean, they're sending me over the loan estimate, and it was crazy for me because I was licensed as a loan officer last summer. I understand, I've been in this industry for a long time. I've used Mortgage Coach before, but as a consumer, there's so much more stress. And suddenly I'm like, I don't know what these forms are saying, it's just like, oh, I get really overwhelmed. I'm like, there's hidden fees in here somewhere. And it's like, so it was a really interesting experience. So I had reached out to you because I didn't know which of these two lenders to go with, and I wanted to use Mortgage Coach. So you gave me a login, and I was playing with it a little bit. But then I was on the phone with James Duncan at Thrive, and he was like, why don't I just have one of our loan officers give you the experience. And I was like, yes, this is what I have been. I mean, it was everything I dreamed of. It's so funny. I texted my whole friend. I have like a 15-person friend group text thread. And I was like, I've got our dream loan officer whenever you're ready. But, and this is the kind of passion I think you would get from these experiences. But so I talked to him on the phone for a minute, and he was like, yeah, just send over those packages. And I sent over all the files, loan estimates and stuff. And he sent me over a TCA, and it was just, I can't tell you how much more relaxed I felt. Like it was just like, okay, I'm going to be okay. And this is where I'm like, I know 1,000% I would pay more for that experience. And to know that he had my back, he walked me through it and explained, here's, if it looks like this is a better deal for you. So I was able to choose the right mortgage product, which is not the one I would have chosen. So it just, it was incredible.
Well, I hope everybody heard something there too. Kristin is a millennial, and she's going, I got a 15-person friend group text. So she could put a link to the TCA in that text. And millennials do that. I recently had an executive that I have a tremendous amount of respect for, where someone had asked me what Mortgage Coach does, and I answered in like 2 minutes. And then he just said, Mortgage Coach is how millennials want to buy homes. And I was just like, yeah, that's true. This is how they want to get mortgages, at least. So Kristin, let's walk through your TCA, because I want to make sure, one, I think I might even use your story from stage.
Yeah.
And by the way, I don't know if you forgot, but actually the Mortgage Coach story started before that, because you and I were having a chat and you were like, should I buy?
Oh, yeah.
Or should I rent? And there was a whole, you were able to put, hey, this is how much money I have in the bank. This is, or in investments. This is what my return on investment is. I could take some of it and put this much down, and what would be my net worth in 10 years? And I think, I can't remember, but I think you had like a 5-year, like I want to know what it looks like for me over the next 5 years.
Yeah, that's so funny. I completely forgot about that. I was really on the fence on whether I should rent or buy. And I had built out a whole spreadsheet where I felt so proud of it. Like, it was I said, I have this much money. And what happens if I invest it in the stock market versus a home, how much I put down, all that kind of stuff. And you were like, this is what Mortgage Coach does. Like, let me do, and more and better. And so then that's whenever you walked me through that. And yeah, it was like a no-brainer. Like, oh yes, definitely I should buy in this case. And so that was my first step into the journey.
Yeah. So let's look at this, guys. And Kristin, if you want to call out anything in this that you thought was most valuable to you, I can either scroll to it or you can, but like obviously guys, this is plain. I think millennials don't want a PDF that just has rate, payment, and cash to close. And also, not just millennials, but everyone wants maximum transparency. So being able to have the transparency of not only the loan options, but the cost over time. And I can't remember, Kristin, I think when we did that first rent versus own, it was like, I want to know where I'm at. It was either 3 or 5 years. And then it was either 10 or 15. And let's just say it's 3 and 10. Because I think that a lot of millennials are like,
yeah,
what's it going to look like in 3 years? What's it going to look like in 10? And you were able to just net that out. So tell us what you liked about this.
Yeah.
Besides the fact that it's got your experience.com integration.
I want to do a shout out here to experience.com integration with Mortgage Coach. So yeah, social proof here, but I am, savings over 60 months, that was really, really clear here. And then, but I don't know, I guess for me, it was, these types of things were helpful. But him walking through this and then and making sure that all of the information was in here correctly. Cause that was the other thing. I even, you'd given me a login, which most consumers wouldn't have, but I was worried that I had read something incorrectly or whatever. And on the first rent versus own one that we did, I ended up saving like, it was a crazy amount, like 50 grand or something. I don't know if you remember, but
I do.
it was a crazy amount of money. And
It was real money. I mean, this was not like
yeah. And I was like, oh
5
my
grand or
gosh.
15 grand.
Yeah, like that's not nothing. I mean, I really could have made the wrong decision here. So it wasn't nearly as much in this case, but I was, it's still definitely significant. And thinking
What
about the monthly payment difference, that's all super helpful. So
did he get into, was it just really kind of high level, 60 months, 15 years, or, did you get into, kind of the details? Now, in this case, it looks like he was more just consulting, helping you pick
yeah,
some lenders that you already had, not necessarily doing your loan. So, it doesn't look like he had the points and all the transactional details. But
right.
but it sounds like in your story, seeing what you were going to do in 60 months was really the value and the key. And then again, you are with experience.com. So I mean, let's do a little more than a shout out. Let's break down the science of selling and how to serve a consumer. So I want everybody who's watching this, you're a loan officer, and if you're a realtor, if your loan officer is not doing this, think about it. The loan officer is the extension of the sales process and the advice process of a real estate agent if they're giving a referral. And so it's branded, it's clean. He did add a video to it. So this version
Yeah.
didn't have the video, but there was a video.
Mhm.
And then, where the consumer is getting education and advice, guys, advice and coaching, they're also able to see the reviews. So, I mean, I think this is a big deal because this is the point where trust comes together
Mhm.
or trust falls apart. So what are your thoughts on just having the experience.com integration in this advice experience?
Yeah. So, I mean, this is where you tip them over the edge. I mean, they get this and they're like, wow, I'm taken care of with this person. They're going to be transparent with me and I can see exactly what the right decision is for me. They're explaining it in a way that I understand, all that kind of stuff. Then you see that and you see, and there's social proof that other people are having great experiences with this person too. And that's just it's like, there's no going back when you see like positive reviews and and the total cost analysis. So I think this is an extremely powerful tool. If you think about where the customer is at, again, they're in a vulnerable place. I mean, you're making a huge, biggest financial decision of your life. And I had talked with a lot of lenders and I would have, like he tried really hard to see if there was another option to get out of those two lenders I had to go with for TIC, but it was a legal thing. But I told them, I was like, I'm going to make sure that every person I know that is buying a home in the future, that they go to you, and that's the way millennials are too, is that I think, and everyone probably, but I've personally studied a lot of millennial behavior and we're very, very referral based. And so when you see these kinds of third-party reviews, that is very meaningful because it's beyond just what my realtor said. I'm not going to know, and I don't think anyone I know is going to just immediately choose their realtor's lender unless they have done some kind of research in addition. And so those types of things are really influential.
Yeah. So let's kind of go into a wrap up mode here. Remember, guys, if you have questions, put them down below. I mean, in my keynote, I'm thinking about including this quote, another great quote where, you as a homeowner have been Uberized, meaning you can expect complex things to happen with the push of a button. And you heard Kristin talk about how that gave Redfin an edge. Some complex things were happening within a button. And kind of my closing thought before we start bringing on speakers at the Modern Real Estate Summit is technology, while it is going to put a new requirement on loan officers, it's not going to put you out of business. But local competitors, loan officers that are local, that are leveraging technology, they're leveraging media, are absolutely, I mean, they're not going to take loans. They are taking loans right now. Like, there's never been more loan officers in America that did over 300 loans last year. There was never been more loan officers that did over 500 loans last year. For the first time ever, there were multiple loan officers that did over $1 billion in mortgages. I interviewed Shant Banashian, who did $1.7 billion in mortgages as a team. And that would not have happened without leveraging technology. Like you got to do it. So Kristin, anything you think we should do in our wrap up? And also know we're kind of making notes for an article that we're going to write. Anything else you think we should close out on?
I don't think so. I think just, I mean, everything we've talked about today is really about empowering the consumer and providing them with more information in a way that's understandable. And I think, leaning into that advisory role, that's what technology can automate things to free up the loan officer and the realtor to provide the best advice.
Yeah, and guys, I just want to remind you guys all, when I said that from stage, I said technology. I do think, and I literally think within a year, I was adding media and technology to that. Here we are in 2021, and what would have been probably a 20-minute call between Kristin and I where we prepped, I amplified it. I jumped on Zoom, I streamed it live into Facebook. There's been several hundred views in Facebook group already. I'm going to put this on YouTube. It's going to get hundreds more views. And I'm taking a conversation, amplifying it with media and technology, and providing leadership. And you should be doing the same thing. If you are a loan officer, if you're a real estate professional, guys, it's too easy. I just interviewed Realtor Glenn Bill, and he was telling loan officers, you know what about jumping on Zoom, doing a Facebook Live, getting a baller agent in your community, teaming up with a housing inspector, and doing a Facebook Live, and then boosting it so that you're amplifying your message. We got to do this. So Kristin, closing thoughts, and then we'll wrap it up.
That's a very core message to experience.com. Every review is shared on average 8.3 times, and amplifying the voice of your customer is a really important. Listening is number one, but then amplifying the voice of your customer is key to growth in today's market.
So I can't just stop on that, because she just said listening is number one. So we talked about media and technology, but at the end of the day, if you're going to do what Amazon can't do, they're not going to listen and love a local customer the way you can. So, you got to use this tech. Kristin, you went through Amplify, didn't you, with Renee Rodriguez?
Yeah.
I don't know if you got this takeaway, but one of my favorite takeaways, he said, hey, if you want someone to like you, don't try to be liked. Focus on liking and loving the person you're talking to. Mm-hmm. And I think that's our closing thought. It's about tech and media, but it's also about loving on people that we're talking to.
Absolutely.
All right, Kristin Messerli, thank you guys. If you got value, give us a like. If you have any critical feedback, I want to hear it. If you got an idea from this, let us know. And if you just saw Dave, got a tweak, can't wait to see you on that stage next Wednesday. And by the way, if you have not bought a ticket to it yet, if you want to buy one ticket, go to modernrealestatesummit.com. If you want to buy the 25 pack or the 100 pack influencer pack, go to modernresummit.com. We'll put a link down below. We're still selling, lots of loan officers are buying 25 and 100 tickets to get out there and share it with agents. So we look forward to seeing you. Take care, Kristin.
Thank you so much.
Really appreciate your time.